Hello everyone, my name's Aiden Burlingame-Lee, and today we're going to be going over kind of what I've done this summer, mainly with my coaching. So the objectives of this presentation are to review the background information of what I've done, where I'm currently at, my strengths and weaknesses, and my goals for the future. So the background information is I went ahead and started coaching in the summer of 2022 at Rocky Mountain High School, and I've been researching the field since then, since at least 2021. And one thing that really helps me out a lot in this field is having marching band experience. And I did a lot of conditioning as a member of the band, and we mainly did more kind of body type exercise. So we didn't really play much with any weights. So how did it all start? I kind of talked a little bit earlier about marching band. So I originally, back in 2020, was really interested in bodybuilding, and I kept going with that till roughly 2021-ish, when I was kind of questioning, like, okay, is this really what I want to do, or do I want to do something else? And so what I intended to do was keep on going, but I had that talk with myself that I was like, if you really want to make it big in this field, you got to take the steroids. And personally, I was not willing to take that risk, so I just went looking elsewhere. And that's when I found bodybuilding. And that's when I found, that's when I found strength and conditioning coaching. And the thing that really got me hooked was watching ESPN's video about strength and conditioning coaches. It talked about like legends like Mickey Marotti, Aaron Feld, and more. And after I kind of got hooked on that, and I was still in kind of that phase of being unsure, my high school's assistant coach at the time, Scott Kreiner, offered to let me join the team, but I really wasn't sure about it during that time period. And so basically I wasn't sure. Then later again, this was kind of more towards my senior year of high school, I got offered again, and Kreiner helped me out, plan out how I will talk to Keelig about getting on the team. So I went ahead and talked to Keelig. Keelig was like, all right, see you in the spring. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, it is on. So now we're going to go ahead and move into my past experiences with coaching. So my past experiences were kind of mainly more observational learning. I wasn't really doing as much kind of hands-on coaching as much as I was watching. And I was slowly building up my confidence during that period, but it wasn't really the greatest back then. I hung out with these guys that are being shown up here: Shane Miller, who's in the bottom right, Taylor Bateman, who's in the top right, and Jake Taylor, who's on the left over there. And I learned a lot of critical components of strength training and agility training. Like, for instance, one of the biggest things I learned with strength training is that a lot of the things that go on in the weight room revolve around the clean. So for instance, when we work on RDLs, I was prepping for that first phase of a clean. And then in order to understand the game more, because I really didn't play the game much during my high school career as I was in marching band, I went ahead and read through the whole entire 435-page NCAA Division I manual and also the football rules book. So continuing a little more, I went ahead and read the rules book, and then I also went ahead and watched the NCAA CFO video play reviews. That kind of helped me understand more of like, okay, so this is what's in the book is translating over to what is being played in the game. And then I also went ahead and took various coaching and conditioning classes at Boise State. So one of them was Kinesiology 184, and then right now I'm taking Kinesiology 185. Kinesiology 184 really helped introduce me to like, all right, so this is how I should plan a workout. So like we started with stationary warm-ups, but then we got into dynamic warm-ups. We got into our big lifts that we want to work on. Then we also put on the side accessory lifts. And then we also made it a little fun too with like a little game at the end. And then kind of continuing on that knowledge where I want to be the best coach possible, I've been reading a lot of books, and these are just two of the books that I've read right here. Advanced Strength and Conditioning, which that one's mainly kind of talking about the science-based aspects of what goes on in strength and conditioning. While with Conscious Coaching, that kind of helped lay the foundation of, okay, so this is how I should coach my athletes. And one of the biggest lessons that I've gained from that book is like, when I'm coaching, make it personal. Like I talked about like when I first started coaching, I wasn't really the greatest at the clean. And so I really wanted to emphasize with them, like, you're gonna kind of suck at this at first because these are freshmen that I'm working with that are like straight out of middle school. And so I wanted them to reassure them that you're not going to get a hang of it immediately, but with enough dedication and progression, you can get there. And then, yeah. So now we're going to talk a little more about my current state. I really like that photo. That was one of my favorite photos from this summer. So my current state, which was basically last season, I felt I was more involved with the conditioning procedures. Um, for instance, I helped Ty out a lot with like helping the guys warm up during dynamic warm ups, checking out their form. Ty was kind of more of leading it, and I was just kind of walking around checking form, making sure everybody was doing it right. And I honestly just felt more confident. I just felt more confident, like, yeah, man, yeah, I feel so much better. And I feel like part of that kind of thing in confidence was taking those classes at BSU, because last summer I didn't have those classes to help kind of have the knowledge of what I need to do out on the field, but taking those classes really helped me out a lot, knowing what I need to do as a coach. And then I also learned too throughout the process at BSU's that programs need to be athlete and sports based. So athletes will have different needs, and also different sports require different types of conditioning. Like a basketball program has similar aspects to a volleyball program, but a basketball training program would not be as similar to a football training program. Then I worked with an exceptional crew this summer, Ty and Gage Tanner. They were awesome guys to work with. And this summer, I just felt like, man, I had better buy-in with the guys. And I think part of that, too, is that both Ty, Gage, and I were pretty young. And being young, it helps us be a little more relatable to the guys that are currently being out there. And then I also feel like coaching, too, has changed how I view school. And what I mean by that is, like, I look at school more of a sport now than just school. Like, for instance, the tougher the class, I view it as like the tougher the game. It's like, that's what's going on. Like, I'm taking biology 227 right now, and that's human anatomy and physiology, and that's the tough one. And I feel like, all right, we're playing the Georgia boys. Yeah. Well, with like an Art 100 class, I feel like I'm just playing like the college down the street. But I also too view as like going to classes like going to practice, doing homework is like practice on my own, and then tests are like the big game day, like, all right, let's suit up and let's take this thing on. All right, so now we're going to talk a little more about strengths and weaknesses. So my strengths, I said earlier, I felt more confident, and I felt like I'm starting to understand more of the programming and the methods that are used to create those programs. I get up really early, like I'm talking like between 3 and 5 in the morning, and I'm really disciplined because I bike almost every day to school, and I've hit 10,000 miles of bike commuting recently, and my rides usually from my house to BSU is about 12 miles each way. And then I also feel like my interpersonal and professional knowledge has gotten better too, because it's easier for me to relate more with my athletes. So my weaknesses, name memorization. This one's a big one for me because I have a tough time remembering names, especially when I got like a program with at least like 100 or 200 guys. It's hard, but I can't say this for all collegiate programs, but one thing that will make it easier at the collegiate level is that most of the times the guys have their numbers on their shorts or on the back of their shirts, or even their last names on the back of their shirts and their practice jerseys. So that helps me out a little bit. And then I felt like my communication when I was like giving athletes feedback in like both the weight room and on the field was a little vague. And I feel like I could go a little more in depth because I was just saying like, all right, you need to move your hips back. And to like from an athlete's point of view, they're like, all right, how far do you want me to move my hips back? And then I kind of caught on to that towards the end of the summer. And I was like, all right, I want you to move your hips back like an inch or two. And because like when we're doing a squat, we need to hinge our hips back because that is vital with a squat. And then the biggest one out of all of these is self-doubt. This is one I feel like I've struggled with my whole life because personally I'm a guy with self-doubt, like, oh, nah, man. Nah, I can't do it, when in reality I can. And, like, it kind of holds me back, I feel like. So if I can get over that self-doubt, that will really help me out a lot. But yeah, that is something that I've kind of really struggled with my whole life. All right, goals for the future. So I use something called the goal pyramid. So like the top goal, like my whole entire number one goal in my life will go on the top, and then my smaller goals will go on the bottom. So I kind of view it as like working my way up the ladder. And so my top goal is like to coach at like an SEC or Big Ten school, because I mean, who doesn't want to work at like Alabama or Georgia or Florida or even Ohio State? But in order to get there, I got to work my way up the ladder. And so I keep my academics in check. That one's not really too much of a problem right now, as right now I have straight A's, but I am really, really hard on academics on myself, and I hold myself to the highest standard. I need to feel like I need to be a little more comfortable coaching, mainly in that sometimes I just feel like I'm a little too quiet, and I need to use that strength coach voice to like show who's like, yeah, who's here, but at the same time, I don't want to be intimidating. And then I also want to attend more CSCCA conferences and also CSCS conferences, as they are very great for networking with other coaches, and they have potential advantages in the hiring process. Because, for instance, let's just say I'm head coach at this university. I have a really good conversation with one of the people at one of those conferences, and they end up applying for one of my jobs. Odds are I'm going to remember the guy and be like, oh, yeah, I remember this guy. This guy knows what he's talking about, and I really like this guy. And that could give you a leg up compared to someone who's just newly applying that's never met this coach before. And one of my smaller goals, like kind of on the small milestones, is get into a collegiate internship. Like right now, I'm going to be going back to Rocky next summer, but I'm really hoping in that fall I can get one at either Boise State or another college in the Treasure Valley. And then I would say this is kind of more of a medium milestone. I want to get my master's degree, because without a master's degree, it's going to be very hard to get hired in the strength and conditioning world. I mean, yes, it is possible to get hired with a bachelor's degree, but most job positions require a master's degree. And before I even get the master's, I need to get my undergrad first. And then I already kind of said the big overall goal. So I just want to give some big thank yous again to Taylor Bateman, Jake Taylor, and the off the field staff, as they are very kind, hosted us for our Night of Champions. And also, they're the guys who kind of helped me out a lot too, like when Ty and Gage or Shane aren't there for all the sessions. They take over for basically varsity guys and JV. And then Shane and Ty and Gage took over for freshmen with me. And then I also want to thank Scott Kreiner and Chris Keelik, because without those two, I wouldn't be in the position I am right now to gain experience early on. My instructors and mentors at BSU, because they're the ones who are helping me lay the foundation in my professional knowledge and also, in a way, my interpersonal knowledge. And then the Rocky Mountain High School football team, because all the coaches there are really supportive. And then, in my opinion, the biggest one that I cannot do this without is my student athletes. They are the ones who are giving me the opportunity and trusting me with them. And to me, that means a lot. So this is just some contact info and presentation requests. So if you just want to look at it more in depth, like view the videos and stuff like that, you can email me at any of these two addresses. I prefer if you're at BSU, email me with your Boise State address, as that makes it easier with me through my Boise State address, and the email doesn't go off like, oh, you're viewing somebody's email from non-Boise State address. So if you're not with Boise State, just email me with my personal one, which is the top one. All right, thank you again.